Instrumental hip-hop has always been a strange middle ground between sampling and hip-hop music. It can be anything from a hip-hop style beat to something a rapper rapped on without their vocals over it. Hell, depending on who made it, it could be heavy guitars or warped and distorted synths. Many hip-hop producers helped to shape the instrumental hip-hop of yesteryear and today, from RZA and DJ Premier to Dr. Dre, DJ Muggs, and a bunch more, but arguably no two have influenced the current landscape more than J Dilla and Nujabes. These two producers together almost entirely form the genre we know today as lo-fi hip-hop. Loop samples and soft drums, or background instruments, that form a sort of forgetful listening experience. You become hypnotized by the music, which is why it's perfect for studying or doing any kind of work, hence why there are so many streams for it. Both of these artists passed away by the year 2010, having no knowledge of how they had influenced the future of hip-hop music, especially online, in the next decade to come and in their entirety. Lo-fi hip-hop artists like Beside You, Mind Design, Tampa Beats, Evie, Sleep Dealer, Alex, Idealism, Ginseng, C-Lab 2012, etc., built on the foundation that J Dilla and Nujabes created with their works like Donuts and Modal Soul. Of all those artists I mentioned, especially Beside You made his presence known with works like Late Night Bumps Volumes 1 through 4, which I'm just going to come out and say is a 2010s lo-fi hip-hop classic. Today, though, we have channels like Chill Hop Music, Ambition, Chilled Cow, although apparently now just going by Lo-Fi Girl. I'm not against these streams of mass-produced drone noise existing, but through the expansion of the genre to the mainstream, we get this streams of entirely nobodies producing music that'll be listened to once. You see so many artist names and they only come up once, it's just like, who are these people? It's the watering down or hipsterification, or I suppose, to expose the dark truth to the world, the gentrification of lo-fi hip-hop. One of my favorite artists, Airospace, said this about the current state of lo-fi hip-hop in a 2020 interview.
So everybody knows Nujabes, right?
Yeah.
I spoke to Nujabes on MySpace when I had my poetry blog. And obviously there's like small kind of like, you spoke Japanese, I spoke this, but I was a fan of your stuff and I reached out and it happened. And then you get your Nujabes, you get your Fat John, you get your Suchi. These are all the people that produced the sounds for the Samurai Champloo, which was what started what we now know as lo-fi.
Exactly.
But that's not what it sounds like now, right?
100% no.
Exactly. So they were able to
100%.
take elements of it that they knew was what it was and then be able to popcorn it. And then you were able to get these kids that got in a specific position, like, oh, you had money for marketing, you did whatever. So now you're a gatekeeper and now you can only let certain people that are your friends or do certain things be allowed into certain areas of the community. I see the separation because I see a lot of people that have been working their asses off from the beginning, like Marcus D. I respect him like shit as a producer. He was there with Nujabes. They were friends. And it's like, and I remember one day he tweeted out and he was like, yo, I don't understand where these kids are making 1 million, 2 million Spotify listeners and no one knows who you are. How does that happen? How does that work? It's the same exact concept. They took it, flipped it, made it something that was easily to access.
And then they
their
denied
people,
your access.
Boom. So then when people ask, they're like, oh, why haven't you gotten a big playlist? Because they don't like my voice. Literally, I've gotten that as a response. Oh,
really?
I don't like your voice. Yeah. Now imagine myself and people that were doing this from 2010, 2011 to now be where it is in 2020. And we're like, you want me to pay what for a playlist? You want me to do what? I think one of the craziest things was seeing people that were fans of me blow up because of what connections they had in the community that I was a part of. With
these people who make these tracks without faces are creating their own instrumental indie soft hip-hop that steps all over the predecessors of the genre while stealing the title for their own. I would say that it got really bad after 2016 and 17 especially, with more and more of these nobody artists somehow getting millions of views of their songs on playlists, robbing those spots of people who've been occupying the same niche long before it became mainstream, like Aerospace said. So that puts us in a bit of a doozy. What is the future of instrumental hip-hop? Are we doomed down the same path of constantly watering down a niche to make it accessible? I suppose hip-hop has always had this issue, watering down traditionally good artists, slapping a white face on it, and boom, suburbs of America see it and go, wow, he's just like me, while completely discrediting the decades of artistry before them. Personally, I would argue that the lanes have shifted. Traditional lo-fi hip-hop styles and techniques have begun to change genres. In the hip-hop sphere, we still have artists like Iwoni, Ali, Knowledge, Twami, Cybe, and some others, I would argue some like Englewood and Flamingosis are in a sort of gray area between hip-hop and future funk, a subgenre of vaporwave. And I believe it's in vaporwave that we see a lot of this original artistry and passion in that lo-fi hip-hop scene. One of my favorite subgenres of vaporwave, and yes, subgenres because vaporwave is probably one of the largest genres in terms of the subcategories, is barber beats. It's called barber beats because the main artist who occupies this niche is Haircuts for Men, who's been making lo-fi hip-hop inspired vaporwave for years. I'd go further and say this style was made possible by efforts in trip-hop and plunderphonics, like Introducing, Since I Left You, Dummy, and even early era vaporwave like Chuck Person's Echo Jams and JPEG Mafia's Dreamcast Summer Songs, which I know technically isn't vaporwave, but it's definitely a precursor to the modern barber beats style. Like, you cannot tell me Power Stone did not influence Haircuts for Men or their contemporaries at all. Typical barber beats characteristics include a looped sample, some reverb, a bit of distortion, and some drums. In theory, they're quite similar to a hip-hop beat. In my opinion, I think the future of instrumental hip-hop is to expand into other genres, and have these styles adapted to fit more. One of my favorite producers right now is Pinnacle Mint, and they've released a bunch of projects on Bandcamp with beats that sound reminiscent of Knowledge, and I'm excited to see what they do next, but I don't think the future is bleak. I think all music will evolve and change over time. Hell, that's the reason hip-hop even came about. It modified breakbeats of rock songs and had a person with a microphone talking over it. For example, the two main songs of that era, The Breaks and Rapper's Delight, are so incredibly basic songs, but without those we would not have nearly of any of our current musical evolution. So I say the future is not bleak. There's much to look forward to in the music sphere, and I think generally hip-hop will be okay. And vaporwave and barber beats will continue to evolve as well. Vaporwave is one of the youngest genres on the internet, existing now for only a little bit over 10 years. I think artists like Macro Blank and Haircuts for Men and their contemporaries will continue to push the envelope while creating art they enjoy. And I think creating the best art that you want to make is what's most important if you're a creative entity in general. Well, that's about all I've got for you. Thanks for watching. Peace.